Beneath the fractured light of an aging sun, the world stood still in silence. The once golden fields were gray now, and the towers that touched the sky had fallen long ago. Yet within the ruins, the pulse of life still beat faint and steady like a heart that refused to die. On the horizon, a man walked through the wind, his steps heavy but unbroken, his breath carrying the taste of dust and memory. His name was Arian, and he was 61 years old. He had once been a soldier of the Celestial Legions, a warrior who believed in the light that never faded. But the light had faded anyway, and with it the dream that once united all mankind. Now he walked alone through what remained of the world, seeking something that still called his name. It was said that destiny never dies. It only waits, and Arian believed that somewhere in the ashes, his destiny still waited for him. Each step echoed like a heartbeat of the earth beneath his boots. Around him, the ruins whispered the stories of those who came before. He could almost hear their laughter and their cries in the wind. He looked to the east, where the mountains were veiled in mist. Beyond them lay the Valley of Silence, where the arrow of fate was said to rest. Legends spoke that whoever found it could alter the course of their life, no matter the years lost or the pain endured. It was not power Arian sought, but redemption. Night came slowly. The light faded to the color of dying embers, and the air grew cold. Arian built a small fire near the remains of an old stone wall. He sat beside it, his eyes reflecting the flames like mirrors of an old soul. He thought of his youth, when he had fought beneath banners of blue and gold, when his heart was light and his sword sang in the air. He remembered her too, the one he had lost. Her name was Solara. She had been his guiding star and his reason to fight. Together they had dreamed of a future beyond war, beyond pain. But fate had torn her away when the sky burned and the heavens opened in fire. For 40 years he carried her memory like a wound that never closed. Now at 61 he was ready to face what destiny still owed him. The wind rose, and with it came a whisper not of the past but of something alive. From the darkness a faint light appeared, moving through the trees. Arian stood his hand on the hilt of his old blade. The figure approached silent, graceful, almost unreal. When it stepped into the glow of the fire, he saw it was not human. She was tall, her skin faintly luminous, her eyes like silver oceans that held the reflection of starlight. Her presence carried the scent of rain and forgotten skies. Arian lowered his blade slowly. "You are not from here," he said. "No," she answered softly. "My name is Althea. I come from the remnants of the Veiled Star." Arian frowned. The Veiled Star was thought to be gone, destroyed in the Celestial Wars decades ago. "I thought your kind vanished long ago," he said. "We hid," she replied. "We watched. And now we seek what remains of hope. The arrow of fate belongs to neither man nor star. It belongs to whoever dares to find it." Arian stared into her eyes. "What do you know of it?" "Enough," she said. "Enough to know that it can rewrite the story of a dying world." He studied her for a long time. There was something in her gaze that reminded him of Solara. Not her face, nor her voice, but the same unbroken flame that refused to yield to despair. "Why tell me this?" he asked. "Because she said you are still walking toward it when others gave up long ago. The arrow of fate listens to those who do not stop." She turned to leave, but paused. "Tomorrow at dawn, the mist will open. The path will show itself for a single hour. If you wish to reach the valley, you must begin then." And with that she vanished into the night as if she were part of the wind itself. Arian sat by the fire, unable to sleep. The stars above shimmered through the dark like shattered glass. He thought of destiny and age, and how the years had carved his soul into something harder than stone, yet still fragile beneath the weight of memory. He touched the small pendant around his neck, the only thing left of Solara. When morning came, he rose. The mist was thick, yet somehow alive, shifting like breath. He walked through it, guided by instinct, by the echo of Althea's words, and by something deeper inside. The land changed as he moved. The air grew warmer, the ground smoother, as if the earth itself wished him forward. He crossed rivers that shimmered with strange light and passed ruins where ancient machines slept in silence. The ghosts of the past watched him unseen. Once he thought he heard Solara's voice calling faintly through the fog. He followed it without hesitation. Hours turned into days, though he could not tell how time passed here. He reached a ridge overlooking a vast valley that glowed with faint silver mist. And there, at its center, stood an ancient obelisk rising from the ground like a finger of stone pointing toward heaven. It pulsed with faint light. "The arrow of fate," he whispered. He descended slowly, his heart beating fast. Each step seemed to echo louder, as if the air itself held its breath. When he reached the obelisk, he saw ancient markings carved into its surface, symbols of both human and alien origin, intertwined as if destiny had woven them together. He touched the stone. A surge of warmth ran through his arm into his heart. The world blurred around him, and suddenly he was no longer. Standing in the valley, but within a vast field of stars, Solara stood before him. Orion. He heard her voice soft, like the wind before. Rain. He fell to his knees, tears filling his eyes. "Solara, is it you?" She smiled, but her eyes were filled with sadness. "You came too late, and yet not too late. The arrow of fate does not change time, it reveals truth." "What truth?" he whispered. "That destiny is not what we find, but what we become." The stars shifted. The light grew brighter. Arian reached for her, but his hand passed through like mist. "You must finish what began long ago," Solara said. "The war is not over. The light must rise again." Then she was gone, and Arian stood once more before the obelisk, his heart heavy yet renewed. He looked up and saw Althea standing at the edge of the valley watching. "You saw her," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied. "I saw the truth, then you understand now. The path ahead is not one of rest, but of purpose." Arian nodded. The fire within him that had dimmed for decades now burned again, brighter than ever. The world may have forgotten its heroes, but he would not forget his vow. At 61 years of age, he would rise once more, not for glory, but for redemption, for love, and for the light that never dies. And as he turned toward the distant horizon, the wind whispered his name, carrying it across the broken world toward whatever destiny awaited beyond the veil of time. The dawn rose like a wound opening in the sky, its light crimson and gold spilling across the valley. Arian stood upon the ridge once more, his cloak fluttering in the chill wind, his eyes fixed on the horizon where new storms gathered. The obelisk behind him had gone silent, its light fading as if it had passed its message into his soul. He could feel it within his blood, a pulse of something ancient, something alive. The arrow of fate had chosen him, though he did not yet understand why. Althea waited near the edge of the valley, her form almost glowing against the shadow of the hills. She looked at him with the calm certainty of one who had walked between worlds and carried the weight of ages. "The light spoke to you," she said. Arian nodded slowly. "It showed me the past, yet it also showed me that the war never ended." "It never does," she replied. "For every dawn that rises, another shadow follows. But now we may have a chance to break the circle if you are willing to walk the path." He met her gaze. "I have walked too far to stop now. Tell me what I must do." She turned and began to walk across the valley, her feet leaving faint trails of light behind her. Arian followed through the mist. Around them, ancient machines slumbered half-buried in the soil like bones of forgotten titans. Their shapes were strange, not of human design, but of celestial craft forged in wars older than the sun. Althea spoke softly as they walked. "Long ago, our people sought to create a weapon that could alter destiny itself. We believed that by shaping fate we could end all suffering. But fate cannot be controlled, only guided. The arrow of fate was forged to pierce the veil between what is and what could be. When the war came, we hid it here among the ruins of your world, and now it has found you." Arian looked down at his hands. They trembled faintly, not from weakness, but from the surge of energy that flowed through his veins. It was as though the years had fallen away. His scars still marked his skin, yet his heart felt renewed. They reached a vast doorway carved into the side of a mountain. Strange glyphs glowed faintly upon its surface. Althea placed her hand against it, and the stone responded, shifting and unfolding until the entrance opened like a living thing. Inside lay a chamber filled with light and crystal. In the center floated a sphere of energy, suspended above a pedestal of obsidian. The air hummed with power and memory. "This is the heart of the arrow," she said. "It listens only to those who have seen both despair and hope. Touch it, and it will reveal the path ahead." Arian stepped forward slowly. The air vibrated around him. When his hand touched the light, he felt as though he were falling through time itself. Visions flooded his mind. Cities burning, the sky splitting, open with fire armies of men and stars locked in endless war. He saw himself young again, standing beside Solara, their hands clasped, their faces determined. Then he saw a future yet to come. Towers rebuilt, children laughing under alien skies, and two worlds, once enemies, standing together. But at the heart of it all, he saw a figure standing alone upon a hill, an old man holding a blade of light, his eyes filled with peace. He gasped and pulled his hand away. The vision faded. Althea looked at him carefully. "What did you see?" "I saw the end," he said softly, "and the beginning." "Then you understand what must be done," she said. "The heart must be awakened, but its power can only be unlocked by sacrifice." Arian frowned. "What kind of sacrifice?" She looked away. "One life for the light to return, one soul to anchor destiny." He stepped closer, his voice firm. "Mine, then. Let it be me." Althea turned her gaze back to him. "No, Arian. You are the vessel. If you fall, the arrow dies with you. There must be another." He fell silent, his heart heavy. They left the chamber and made camp beside a pool of still water beneath the open sky. The night was calm, filled with the quiet music of distant stars. Althea sat across the fire, her expression unreadable. "You remind me of someone," she said, "a warrior I once knew long ago before the fall. He too believed that redemption could be found in sacrifice. But he learned that living for the light is harder than dying for it." Arian nodded. "At 61, I have done my share of dying inside. Perhaps it is time to live for something again." She smiled faintly. "Then perhaps you are ready for what comes next." A sound broke the quiet, a low hum rising from the distance. Arian stood quickly, his instincts sharpened. From beyond, the ridge lights appeared, moving fast across the night sky. The air filled with the scent of metal and smoke. "The hunters have found us," Althea said. "Who are they?" "Remnants of those who once served the dark continuum. They seek the heart to twist fate for their own ends." She drew a weapon of strange design, its blade made of pure light. Arian unsheathed his old sword, the metal dull but strong. The ships descended, their engines roaring. Figures emerged, armored and faceless. Energy bolts lit the night. Arian and Althea fought side by side, moving with the grace of warriors who had known countless battles. Though age weighed upon him, Arian's strength burned anew, driven by purpose and memory. One of the hunters struck him across the chest, but he stood firm, parrying and driving his blade into the shadow's core. The ground shook with the force of their clash. Althea moved like a storm, her strikes precise, her eyes glowing with celestial fire. Yet for every foe they felled, more emerged from the dark. "We cannot hold them," she shouted. "We must reach the inner gate." Arian nodded and covered her retreat, his blade slicing through the mist and blood of the night. They reached the base of the mountain, where another portal waited, glowing faintly with golden light. Althea pressed her hand against it, and the gate opened. "Go," she said. "Not without you." She looked back at the battlefield where more hunters advanced. "Someone must close the gate behind us." Arian grabbed her arm. "I will not leave you to die." She met his eyes. "Fate brought you here for a reason, Arian. If I fall, remember what I said. Live for the light." Before he could speak, she pushed him through the portal and the world dissolved in light. When he opened his eyes, he was standing alone in a vast field of silver grass under a sky filled with stars. The gate behind him was gone. The silence was endless. He fell to his knees, his heart breaking with loss and rage. He looked to the heavens and swore upon every star he would not let her sacrifice be in vain. Then he stood his sword in hand and began to walk once more toward the unknown horizon where destiny waited beyond the dark. The wind over the silver plains carried a sound like the breath of forgotten gods. Arian walked for what felt like days, though the stars above never moved. The air shimmered faintly, filled with memories not his own. Every step echoed as though the ground itself remembered every soul that had ever crossed it. He had passed through the gate and left Althea behind, yet her words lived within him sharper than any blade. Live for the light, she had said. He did not know if he could, but he knew he must try. He moved across the plains until he saw something rising ahead, a structure of black crystal twisting toward the sky like the spine of the world. Around it the air rippled with power and shadow. It pulsed faintly as though alive. He approached carefully, hand on his sword. As he neared, he saw figures kneeling around the base of the crystal. They were human, yet not human. Their skin pale, their eyes hollow, their bodies thin as bone. They chanted in a language that cut through the air like cold wind. Arian stepped forward. The figures turned as one, their voices silenced. For a moment none moved. Then the nearest one spoke, his voice brittle as old glass. You should not have come, old one. The fate of men is sealed. Arian stood firm. Fate is never sealed while the heart still beats. The figure smiled without warmth. You carry the mark of the arrow. It sings within you. Give it to us, and you may yet live. I have lived long enough, Arian said. The figures rose, moving with unnatural speed. Arian drew his blade and met them head-on. They fought like shadows, vanishing and reappearing, striking from the edges of light. But Arian had fought ghosts before, both within and without. His sword shone faintly as it cut through the air, singing with old power. He struck one down and another, and still they came. Then the black crystal flared with dark light, and a voice filled the air deep as thunder. So the vessel has come at last. The ground trembled. From the crystal emerged a being tall and cloaked in darkness, its face hidden behind a mask of obsidian. The air around it burned with cold. Who are you? Arian demanded. I am what remains of the continuum, the voice replied. I am the keeper of all endings. The arrow was forged to defy me, and I have waited through centuries to reclaim it. Arian lifted his sword. You will not have it. The figure laughed, a sound that made the stars flicker. You think to fight fate itself, old man? Fate can be faced, Arian said, his voice steady. I have faced time loss and death. You are no different. The dark figure extended its hand. The air thickened, the ground cracked, and the sky folded into shadow. Energy coiled around Arian, pulling at his strength, dragging at his soul. He fell to one knee, but still he held his blade upright. He closed his eyes and saw Solara's face once more, her smile soft, her eyes filled with light. He heard Althea's voice echoing within his mind. Live for the light. Then something within him broke open and fire poured through his veins. His body glowed faintly, gold lines of energy tracing across his skin. The mark of the arrow burned bright upon his chest. He rose and the darkness recoiled. No, the figure roared. It is not possible. Arian lifted his sword and light erupted from its edge. The blast shattered the shadows and tore through the crystal, sending shards of dark energy flying into the sky. The being screamed as the light pierced its mask, revealing for a brief moment a face that was not monstrous, but sorrowful. We were never meant to die, it whispered. Then it was gone and silence fell. Arian stood in the ruins, breathing hard, his strength nearly spent. The plains were still now, the air clear and filled with faint starlight. He looked up and saw the horizon shift, revealing a new light far away beyond the hills. He began to walk again, though every step was pain. The years weighed upon him, yet something within him burned unbroken. He crossed valleys and rivers of light and found himself at last before a great wall of stone carved with the symbols of both his world and Althea's. There at the center was a door. Upon it glowed the sigil of the arrow. He touched the door and it opened. Inside was a vast hall filled with statues of those who had come before warriors, kings, dreamers, and wanderers, all facing a single throne at the far end. Upon the throne sat a woman draped in light, her eyes closed, her hands folded upon her lap. "Solara," he breathed. Her eyes opened. "You came," she said softly. He approached slowly, heart-pounding. "You are real. I am what remains of her, and more," she said. "When I fell, I became part of the light. It was my voice that called you through the arrow. You were never walking toward fate, Arian. You were walking toward truth." He fell to his knees before her. "Then tell me what I must do." She rose from the throne, her form shimmering like sunlight on water. "The worlds are dying," she said. "The fires that bind them fade. You carry within you the last spark. You must reignite the source." "How?" She placed her hand upon his chest. "Through sacrifice, not of life, but of fear. Let go of the weight of time. Become the arrow itself." He felt warmth flood through him, the ache of decades lifting like mist. The light around them brightened until it filled everything. He could see again the fields of their youth, the sky clear, the world unbroken. He could see Althea standing upon a hill, watching, smiling faintly. Solara stepped back, her voice fading. "Go, Arian. The light is waiting," and she was gone, leaving only the echo of her voice. Arian turned and walked toward the far side of the hall where a great gate of gold stood open. Beyond it burned a fire brighter than any star. He stepped into it without hesitation, and the world vanished in brilliance. When the light faded, he stood once more upon the silver plains. The air was alive, the stars pulsed with energy, the land itself shimmered with renewal. The years had returned to his face, yet the pain was gone. He was whole, not young, not old, simply alive. He looked toward the horizon and saw distant lights rising, ships human and celestial moving together across the dawn sky. The world was healing, he whispered to the wind. "Solara Althea, the light lives." And the wind answered softly, carrying his words beyond the horizon. The dawn of the new age rose like a symphony of light across the silver plains. Arian stood alone upon a ridge, his cloak stirred by gentle wind, his eyes reflecting the glow of a world reborn. The fires of destiny burned low behind him, yet the warmth of hope spread outward across the land. The old wars had ended not in victory or defeat, but in understanding. He had seen the truth beyond fate, and in that truth he had found peace. The sky above shimmered with shapes of distant ships, human and celestial, moving as one. The remnants of both worlds had begun to rebuild not from power, but from memory, from the promise of all who had fallen before. And though his body bore the marks of age, his heart felt lighter than it had in years. He walked down from the ridge, his steps slow, steady each one, echoing like a heartbeat of the world itself. The land was alive again. Rivers that had run dry now glittered under sunlight. Fields long dead now sprouted with shoots of silver grass. The air carried the scent of renewal and the song of unseen life. Arian followed the faint trail that led toward the horizon where the Valley of Silence once lay. The obelisk that had once guarded the arrow's resting place now stood broken, its light scattered into the soil, becoming the pulse of the earth. He knelt beside it, placing his hand upon the stone. "It is done," he whispered. A voice answered, soft as starlight. "Not yet, old warrior." He turned and saw Althea standing there, her form half light, half shadow, her eyes filled with gentle fire. "You survived," he said, though his voice trembled with disbelief. "In a way," she replied. "The gate did not destroy me, it changed me. I am bound now to the flow of the arrow, to the living current of fate itself." He stood and faced her. "The worlds are healing. The darkness is gone. What more remains?" She stepped closer, her gaze calm. "The arrow's journey never ends. It moves from one soul to another, carrying the memory of those who dared to challenge destiny. It needs a guardian." He looked down at his hands, the faint golden lines still visible beneath his skin. "I am tired, Althea," she smiled. "Even the stars rest before they rise again. You need not fight now, only guide." She reached out, touching his chest where the mark glowed faintly. The light within you will fade in time, she said, but its echo will remain, and those who follow will find strength in your memory. He felt tears form in his eyes, though he did not weep. I have walked through fire and shadow. I have lost and found and lost again. Tell me one thing, Althea. Did it mean anything, everything she said? Because you believed when others forgot. Because you chose to rise when the world fell silent. She extended her hand, and from the air formed a small shard of light shaped like an arrowhead. It floated between them, pulsing gently. The arrow of fate is yours to release, she said. Send it where it must go. He looked at it for a long time, his reflection shimmering within its glow. Then he raised his hand, and the shard lifted higher, rising into the sky until it became a streak of light vanishing beyond the clouds. Where will it go? He asked. Where it is needed, she answered. Perhaps to another world, perhaps to another soul, waiting for the strength to rise. The wind swept across the plains, carrying with it the hum of the reborn world. Arian felt his strength fading, but it was not weakness, it was completion. The burden that had carried him for decades lifted. He sat upon a rock overlooking the valley, his sword laid across his knees. The light around him grew softer. In the distance, he saw people moving across the fields, rebuilding what had been lost. Humans and beings of the veiled star worked together, their laughter faint but real. He smiled. Althea stood beside him, silent, her form flickering like a dream. I thought destiny was a path, he said. But it is a circle. We begin and end in the same place, only wiser. She nodded. The circle is life. He looked toward the horizon where the light deepened into hues of gold and violet. I once thought my years were my chains, but now I see they were the forge that shaped me. You have given the worlds a new dawn, she said softly. That is all any soul could hope for. The air grew warm around them. Arian closed his eyes and breathed in the scent of the living earth. The wind whispered through the grass, speaking in voices of memory and peace. He felt Solara's presence there too, not as a ghost, but as light woven into every sound and every breath. Her voice came faint and gentle. You kept your promise, Arian. He smiled faintly, his eyes still closed. I never stopped walking toward you. And then the world went quiet. The light pulsed once more, and the breeze carried his final breath into the open sky. Althea watched him fade into stillness, his body glowing faintly before turning into light that rose into the heavens, joining the endless river of stars. She bowed her head and whispered words in the ancient tongue of her people. May the arrow guide you home. She turned and walked away through the silver fields, her silhouette framed against the rising sun. The light followed her every step until both she and the dawn became one. High above the sky shimmered as a single streak of light crossed the heavens. It was the arrow of fate flying toward the unknown, carrying with it the spirit of the man who had defied time itself, and somewhere beyond the stars another world stirred, another soul awakened. To the call of destiny, ready to rise and continue. The story that never ends, because fate waits for those who still believe. Even after decades have passed, even at 61 when the body fades. But the spirit still strives for glory.